So on the left, we have the SQL that creates the database and adds the tables to the database. And at the bottom, we have the indexes that we created for the assignment, creates a user and grants privileges to the user. And on the right, we have the phpMyAdmin. The database has already been created up here. But we would just use this SQL statement to create the database and then use each block of the create table statements to create each table. So we have create table vendors, we have the vendor ID, which is an integer, not null, and it'll auto increment. So that way we don't have to insert manual data, and this will be the same for all the primary keys. So invoice ID and line item ID on the invoices and line items tables. Let's open the vendors table in phpMyAdmin. So we have all of our columns over here: vendor ID, vendor name, vendor address, vendor city, vendor state, vendor zip code, vendor phone. And these are all of the data types that each column will accept. So varchar 45 characters, 45 characters. These will only accept 10, and this one will only accept 20. And here we identify the vendor ID column to be our primary key. And then invoices table, we'll go over here. We have all of our columns listed: invoice ID, vendor ID, invoice number, invoice date, invoice total, payment total. So we have all of our columns here: invoice ID, vendor ID, all of the data types. For decimal, I did the 10 and the 2 in the parentheses to allow 10 digits before the decimal and only 2 digits after. And then here we identify the primary key, which will be the invoice ID column. The foreign key is the vendor ID that is being referenced from the vendors table for vendor ID over here. And the line items table has all of the columns listed: line item ID, invoice ID, description, quantity, price, and line items total. And again, the data types and the primary key, which is the line item ID column, and then the foreign key, which is being referenced from the invoices table. So the invoice ID column that's up here. Here we create indexes on line items, invoice ID, and the vendor ID, and then the invoice number on the invoices table, just to allow it easier for us to search the data that we need in the tables. And then this line will create the user that'll just be used on the local host, which is just the device they're operating on, identified by Sesame. And then at the bottom, this bar will disappear. It'll say grant, select, insert, update on to the user. This is just granting the privileges to the user that will be using the tables.